This week, we learn about how a weird shrimp lobster kaiju thing creates a new superfan. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Echoes of Giant Monsters. I am your host, Slick. I hope you're doing swell and dandy and all that good stuff. This is another episode where I am going to be joined by a guest. This week, it is YouTuber, figure reviewer extraordinaire, ShinRobjira, and he's joining me to talk about how his Godzilla fandom started, and it started with Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster. Not a movie that people often cite as their first Godzilla movie, but just like Godzilla vs. Megalon had a really personal impact on me, this movie had a very personal impact on him, and turned him into the super fan and figure collector that he is today. So it's a very good conversation. It's a very personal conversation. I appreciate Rob being willing to share the story, and we have a lot of good laughs along the way. So I guess without further ado, let's just get on to that conversation. Yeah, it's always odd how to start podcasts. I guess we'll just, because it's we've already been chit-chatting for 30 minutes. So
we've broken the ice.
So I guess. Hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm great, Chris. How are you?
Oh, good. It's so good to just suddenly jump in this recording and just start talking to you. I think I'm going to leave all this in. I feel like that's what the big podcasters do. They kind of leave these awkward intros in. So I'll polish it up a little bit. Yeah. But as I said in the intro, the man ShinRobjira is here. Joining me on this episode to talk about your very first Godzilla movie. And, it's kind of like I was saying to you before I started recording, I think it's interesting when someone's first movie is, it's not something like King Kong versus Godzilla or the first Godzilla movie or something like that. It's something that's a little bit more random. Whereas I had Godzilla versus Megalon. You have Godzilla versus the Sea Monster.
Yeah. Fun fact, I hadn't seen Godzilla versus Megalon until I was in my early 20s, or maybe a bit earlier than that, when I forget who even did the Blu-ray and DVD release of it.
Okay.
I had no way of finding it.
Yeah. It's funny because it had a period where it was just constantly on TV here. There was a dubious, is it public domain? Is it not public domain? Is a certain cut public domain? Is that not public domain? And then, it just kind of feels like it disappeared somewhere, in the late 90s and 2000 aughts. Mystery Science Theater 3000 wasn't re-releasing it. Actually, no, it's funny. The other Godzilla movie that Mystery Science Theater 3000 did in their early days was Godzilla versus the Sea Monster.
I did not know that, and now I need to see it.
Yeah, I think that's... I could be wrong, because it's off the top of my head. It could be from, when they were still in that local station, but it is out there. You can find it, I think. So
I will find it.
Yeah.
Even if I have to sync the movie up to the audio, I will find it.
Nah, I think those episodes aren't too hard to find. I think you're a clever fellow with the internet. I think you can find it. I have faith in you.
Good. Because I want to find it.
Yeah, maybe you'll watch it after this. I don't know.
Oh, I might. The night is young.
Yeah, it is. It is. And full of terrors. But yeah, I guess let's just get into it. Why don't you take us back in time to seeing this movie for the first time? And for a little frame of context, a reference, did you have any concept of Godzilla as a character?
No.
As you'd walk us through this?
Zero. This was my introduction right out the gate. Didn't know who or what Godzilla was. I was just your typical early 90s kid that loved dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was huge on Japanese movies, B movies, the whole nine yards. That was his bread and butter. That was definitely his bread and butter. So when he's like, "You like dinosaurs, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "You ever hear of Godzilla?" I'm like, "Who?" So I remember getting into the van and going to the pizza place we always went to, and then we walked into Blockbuster.
No.
Blockbuster didn't have anything. So there was a mom and pop shop a little bit down the road, and they specialized in, movies and I don't even know. They had a little bit of everything going on in there.
Sure.
And I remember seeing the VHS art for the US release of Godzilla versus the Sea Monster. That really blue, very colorful VHS art. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about or not.
Is it the one where
It's Heisei Godzilla on the beach with Ebirah in the ocean?
and he's green and I have that VHS tape.
You see, that's like a holy grail for me. I need to get that. But you remember being like a kid or even a teenager and you based your purchase on something based on how, the movie art looked or how the album art looked? You didn't hear it, you don't know anything about it. Did you ever do that?
I mean, that's literally what I did with Godzilla versus Megalon. Like, right?
So you know exactly how it feels to pick something up, look at the cover, and just think, this looks awesome. I need to see this. I need to listen to this. And it just so happened that, the conversation tied into the purchase of that. And, I was a kid. The closest thing I had ever experienced to Tokusatsu at that point in time was Power Rangers, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Yeah. That was it.
So roughly how old are you right now when this discovery is happening? Roughly.
I think it was 1996, maybe 95. So I might have been 4 or 5, maybe.
Oh, wow.
4 or 5.
Oh, wow.
And I remember this specifically just because it's burned into my brain. But I remember just being so obsessed with that VHS tape art. And even to this day, it's like if they ever make a shirt of that, I'm buying 3. And I just remember loading the tape in and not being bored by all the human stuff, being absolutely enthralled when Godzilla finally wakes up, when you see Ebirah's claw for the first time, the people on the boat getting rocked around and everything, the boat that essentially pees into the sea with its magical lemon juice.
Yeah.
Like, it was just such an experience because, again, like my only look into that world, into that way of filmmaking was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I had never seen it done like that before. And, my child brain couldn't comprehend the fact that boat is probably like about that big.
Sure,
that claw is about the size of your hand, just a bit bigger. And it was just magic. Like, I don't want it to sound, what's the word, like typical or stereotypical, but it was just like that. It was like tasting ice cream for the first time. It's like you took a bite of that. It's like, everything's going to be okay. For me, my ice cream moment was seeing Ebirah's claw come out of the ocean, attack the canoe that the two guys were on, the boat. And just like, again, that to me is iconic. Just seeing this rise out of the ocean.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to openly describe what that made me feel, but it was really just like, I don't know, some people's like, oh, I saw God for the first time in my life. I saw my life flash before my eyes. Me as a 4 or 5-year-old was just like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my entire life, and nobody can tell me different, and nobody's been able to tell me different since then, because the fun, the fantastic surf rocky soundtrack that was tossed into it, just like the characters stealing a boat, the dance competition where they lost,
but still get the boat anyway, or steal the boat anyway.
Yeah, they steal the boat anyway. There's a criminal on board. These people that are morally suggestive are like going to be the heroes of our story. It was just such a moment. And it's crazy to me because I remember so much more about like what the humans were going through than for a while that I even remembered about Godzilla. Because after that tape was unfortunately sold off without my say-so, all I remembered was These three dudes get into a boat and get attacked by a giant lobster.
Yeah.
That's all I
Yeah.
remembered. But Godzilla being woken up with a sword with some wire attached to it to catch the lightning strike. All of that is just, it was just out of sight, out of mind. But the minute that came out on DVD, I was there.
Yeah.
50th anniversary collection, Godzilla versus the Sea Monster. Just, dude, to me personally, that feels like a moment in my life where it was like, I knew I was going to be into this my entire life.
Yeah.
Even though I took a break from it in my teens because it's not cool. But
Well, so I think kind of like to kind of what you're saying, but like when you see Godzilla for the first time, right? Like I think of like, I think I can do a lot of comparisons to Godzilla versus Megalon with this, where it's like, like I said when I did like an episode about it, it was like Godzilla versus Megalon is filled with stock footage and it's like a cheap production and stuff like that. But when I'm 9 years old and I see it for the first time, I don't know that it's stock footage. I don't know. All I know is that I am seeing something that I have never seen anything like that to that point in my life. And I would argue I have not seen, there's similar stuff like Gamera and Guala and Yappa and stuff like that. But like the Godzilla movies, like they're just so, for as different as they can be, it's like they are their own thing. Like there's nothing that's like really like them. And so like, when you're seeing this movie for the first time, you don't realize the Godzilla suit that has been through so much trauma. And like to you, that's just what it looks like. And it's even if were you into Power Rangers like much at the time, like
oh, I was obsessed. Like I had the figures, I had the Megazord, I had the footy pajamas that made you transform into a Power Ranger, the whole 9 yards. So it's like guys in suits.
It's guys in suits, but it's done so differently.
Yeah. Because a guy in a suit to me at that point was Barney.
Right.
And that was like, even as a kid, so visibly fake because he was, material. He was felt. He looked like a plush toy.
Right.
But Godzilla just felt real. It felt so real.
Yeah.
Like looking at it now, it's like, obviously, yeah, it's a guy in a suit, but I still get that like airs of grace about it, that gleam of it, where it's like, nah, that ain't a man in a suit. That is a real creature fighting a giant shrimp or lobster, or I'm pretty sure it's a shrimp, or maybe a lobster, or both.
He's got the lobster tail, but I don't know. Like, I actually don't really know what he's.
So technically, he's not just a giant sea critter; he's a giant amalgamation.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think that's like well, Haruo Nakajima is still playing Godzilla at that point, right? It's like. Yeah. Like he does, like it's just the craftsmanship that goes into it, even when they don't have like the budget or the fanciest suits. Like it still makes you believe, right? It's like
absolutely,
and that's like really something that's like really magical. Not to be corny, but that's like something that's like magical about these movies. So
no, there ain't nothing corny about that statement. That's just fact, and I honestly couldn't have said that better because it's true. It really is true. Like, like I said, like nowadays it's so obvious, but back in the day when you see that for the first time, it just does something to you. Whether you think it looks horrible or you think it just looks like so very real because you've never seen something like that before.
Mm-hmm.
Just the fact that something like that can give you that kind of a reaction right out the gate.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is special. It's so special.
So did you then start watching this movie like on repeat? Like did this instantly just kind of become captivating, or did you have to like kind of warm up to it after that?
No, I was down for the count after that. It was it was over. And I remember specifically watching that with my dad eating pizza back when Coca-Cola still tasted good. And didn't give me cramps. I remember like turning to my dad and looking at him just like, I wish they made Godzilla toys. I really do. And this was just like one of the best days of my life at that point because he was like, well, he took me to this place. If anybody in New Jersey in the 90s remembers Outer Limits, he took me to this place, Outer Limits, which is like the core essence to everything on my YouTube channel. Because they had, let's see, this was like the 90s, so no, that wasn't there yet. Toho Kaiju series wasn't there yet. I guess it was between the Godzilla collection and the Godzilla Forever line. There might be one that I'm forgetting, but when I say they would have shelves of these vinyl figures with their tags and card protectors and everything, the little Ziploc baggies.
Oh, that's where you got it from.
Like, I didn't realize that was a major thing until after I started doing it, seeing that people actually like did it without the Ziploc baggies. But they were in top loaders, they were in the Ziploc baggies. There were so many of them. And that walking into that place, to me, the same day I see my first Godzilla movie, that was like, it's like going into Toys R Us for the first time and seeing walls of things.
Yeah.
You don't know what any of them are. And that's how I was introduced to everything else. Because I asked the guy, I'm like, well, who's that? Oh, that's King Ghidorah. Oh, who's that? That's Gamera. Does Godzilla fight him? Oh, no, he doesn't do that. It's from a different company.
Well, kid, 30 years from now, mobile game's going to come out, and they're going to fight in that.
And they're going to be anime representations of them. But, you know, that in and of itself, I mean, that's a whole other, like, discussion there. But I remember the tagged ones were really expensive, even at that point in time, because the guy's like, I buy these right out of Japan. I buy them off my friends, so I need to recoup the expenses.
Sure, yeah.
So my first Godzilla figure was the 6-inch Imperial Godzilla.
Oh, mine too.
Yeah.
Mine too.
It was like, I think maybe $6.
Yeah.
And I brought that thing with me wherever I went. Everywhere. Yeah. I would put it in my backpack when I went to school. I would, you know, bring him on the beanbag chair with me whenever I was watching Godzilla versus the Sea Monster for the 85th time in the day, or one of the other movies that my mom or my grandmother had gotten me to, like, you know, nurture the fact that he's into something that he really does enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, like, I'll never forget. I could write a book about that day. It just had so many, like, moments. But yeah, Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, it just had me right then and there. And the fact that I got one of my first figures on that day was that. Because now that I'm thinking about it, that was definitely my first Godzilla figure. And a video I made a long time ago of the Trendmasters 4.5 Roaring Godzilla definitely wasn't my first Godzilla figure. Holy God.
Oh no, do we just reveal that you got to redo one of your videos now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been planning on doing that for a while, but
just kidding.
Yeah.
So then you go from there, you try to find more movies. Like, is this the same deal? You go back to, like, the mom and pop video store? Like, what else do they got? What else do they got sitting there?
A couple of weeks later, it was the Godzilla versus Gigan and Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla double VHS box set. With Godzilla 84 on the cover for some reason.
Yeah, I think I have that too. It's like right off like from like where I'm sitting, and I can't see it. I feel like that might be it's not a Star Maker release. It might be I forget. It's okay. But
might have been Anchor Bay. Might have.
Yeah, I'll have to look afterwards. But yeah, it's like so funny because like they slap like the Godzilla 84 face like on these like Showa era movies.
And that happens like quite a lot. Like when Anchor Bay did their Godzilla's Best Battles box set, which I just bought a couple of years ago. It's like it's all 1984 Goji. But like sometimes the cover art doesn't match or anything, or the movie itself isn't even there. It's great.
Or it's like I don't remember who it was that released it, but it was like the original, the 1956 Godzilla King of the Monsters VHS, like has like Godzilla it has like Godzilla 74 on the cover. Yeah. I love like that box art that was like available in the 90s, like we were kids, because like it's just so off the rails half the time, and just the box art for this movie is like is awesome. Or the both one that we both I think are talking about.
Yeah.
But this movie was pretty sick.
Yeah, and I even as a kid, it's like, well, Godzilla's not green in this movie. He doesn't look like that. I was just boom. But it's actually really interesting because Anchor Bay, the people who put out a lot of Godzilla VHSs back in the day, are actually back. They're like
in pod form.
I don't know what they're doing. They're actually
reference.
But no, like they're back. Like they're a company again. They have their first release all lined up and everything. I think I did a post on it on Twitter, I think. But
That's
it's like
wild.
if they come back and they go back and they bring back that kind of box art, I'm so there for it. Even if it's for a movie I don't like or don't even know, it's like I'm there for that box art. The nostalgia.
One quick thing, like you just kind of reminded me of, like my it's kind of sitting like right behind me. I'll knock over my mic if I like try to grab it. But like my very first Imperial Godzilla figure, like as I got more into Godzilla movies and like I realized the Godzilla was not green, I actually painted mine like kind of like a black grayish to make it more accurate. So anyway, so now all right, so now you're fully in now, right? Like it is this, and this stays, it sounds like uninterrupted to like your teens. You're just kind of getting more and more into it.
Yeah, because in my teens, people made fun of me, and I didn't want to get made fun of, so I kind of like shied away. Plus, around that time, coming across Godzilla material was really hard.
Yes.
VHSs stopped popping up. Trendmasters, rest in peace, Kings and Queens. They went belly up after 98, and he kind of just like left my life, and I wasn't aware that more movies were being made at that point in time. Because I was born and Godzilla and Mothra Battle for the Earth came out. Like I had no idea. But I think the reawakening in that sense might have been, oh God rest their souls, the Sci-Fi Channel, back when Sci-Fi was still spelled SCI-FI.
Yeah.
They were doing a Godzilla marathon. I'm like, oh my God, I haven't seen Godzilla in ages. What's Godzilla versus Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, 1990? What, Mothra and Godzilla? Like, it was just huge. And I remember playing sick that day because I had seen like an advert or something the night before, and I'm like, I can't go to school. I can't do it. I'm sorry. And I remember plopping myself on the couch, juice boxes and snacks and everything.
Yeah.
And just watching all of these movies for the first time and just being, so enraptured. It's like, they look so much different now. Godzilla looks mean and stuff. And Mothra doesn't have a cigarette on the back of her head. And what is going on? And that was it for me all over again, because shortly after that, it was the 50th anniversary that crept up.
Sure. And yeah.
The DVDs, the box sets, everything were coming out, and
the video games are coming out.
Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee was a moment in time that I will not forget for two reasons. One, I wanted to, okay, we're not going to go there. One, something else. It was coming out on a console that I just got the year before, and I was very excited about it because I could actually play it. And two, Metroid Prime came out, I believe, that same year. And that was like two major games that changed my trajectory entirely.
Yeah, because you do a lot of Metroid content too.
I love Metroid. But
it's funny you mentioned that marathon, because I just had Mothra Mystic, or mutual friend Nikki, on, and
she's great.
Her first exposure to Godzilla and Mothra is that very same Sci-Fi marathon. That was like, so the one that like her and I just like talked about, that was like her, it was like the same deal. It was like, she's watching TV, she sees either King Ghidorah, Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, the 91 one, or Godzilla versus Mothra. Like one of those comes first, and then it's it. She like watches the rest of the marathon. And it's funny. This is why I like doing these sort of topics, right? Because it's like I kind of draw parallels like to my own life, and and I hope other people draw it to theirs. Like I had the TNT Monster Vision
Mm-hmm.
marathon in the 90s because like I'm not that much older than you, but like I'm like older enough where it's like it makes there's just like enough of like memories I'm having a little bit before you are like old enough to have memories, right? So it's like
Yeah.
TNT used to do it would be Godzilla King of the Monsters, Godzilla versus the Thing, Monster Zero, and Terror of Mechagodzilla and Godzilla's Revenge. Like that was like their marathon that they would do. And
Fire
like
marathon. Oh,
oh, it's like all day. It's all day, and you would get the Blue Oyster Cult Godzilla music video in between, or the one that they made. I actually have like I VHS taped the marathon one day, and I still have my tape with all the commercials in it and everything. So, like you know, these it's wild. Like these marathons made such a good impact on people, and it's I knew a little bit about your backstory with this. Like I didn't know that the sci-fi marathon like kind of reawakened it.
oh yeah.
In hearing that kind of combined with like Nikki's story, I was like, oh my God, I was like that marathon like must have impacted like so many people. And not to be like not trying to be like snooty fan or anything like that, but it was like I remember those marathons, but I already owned I had imports of all the movies. Like
Yeah.
I didn't really spend time like I was like, oh wow, I can watch these whenever I want. But
Yeah. That was a luxury for me as a kid. Like going to a friend's house and their dad or their mom had a VHS tape of Godzilla, and it's like, where did you get this? I mean, that's how I found out about Suncoast. It really does just like trail off, like tree branch off into a million different things because it's like one day it's like, is that a Godzilla movie? It's like, yeah, it's Godzilla's revenge and stuff. He fights a whole bunch of monsters. It's like, where did you get that? It's like, oh, there's this place at Willowbrook Mall in Totowa. It's called Suncoast. Just go there. That was the end of me.
hmm.
Because they had everything that FYE or coconuts they were at one point, if anybody remembers.
Strawberries, coconuts, FYE, Sam Goody.
Everything. Sam Goody even. Well,
Sam Goody.
but they had everything that the other stores didn't have, so that was like another $100 of movies. Just bought the double feature specifically of King Ghidorah versus Godzilla, and then Mothra and Godzilla, and then Space Godzilla versus Destroya. Those awful double-sided DVDs where there was just nothing on that you had to flip them over and everything.
Yeah.
Like I love that. I love that. I really do.
So when you're in your reawakening, do you go back to Godzilla versus the Sea Monster?
When the DVD came out, yeah. And I was very upset that the DVD art wasn't the same as the VHS.
Sure, yeah.
But when that 50th anniversary set came out, I don't think Sea Monster was one of the first ones that came out.
Yeah.
So I think that was like the second wave of releases.
Yeah, we talking about like the run that had like Son of Godzilla and stuff like that.
Son of
too.
Godzilla,
Yeah.
Terror of Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. Just like the Golden Banner 50th anniversary.
Yes, yeah.
So when that commercial first came up on one of the DVDs, now available on DVD, the original Godzilla series, like blew my friggin' mind. And coming soon, Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, like the Millennium era. But I think eventually there was an advert for Godzilla and coming soon, Godzilla versus the Sea Monster or something like that. And I like stood up and shouted. My mom thought I like fell and broke a tooth or something. It's like, I need to get this. And I remember the very next day, I'm like, Grandma, I need to go to FYE like today. And she was like, why? I'm like, I need to pre-order a DVD.
Yeah. Pre-order a DVD. What a sign of the times.
Yes. In store, not on Amazon, not on any of the websites. I had to walk my happy ass into FYE, go up to Jen. Her name was Jen. If you're listening, you're definitely not. Love you. But it's just like, I would like to pre-order Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, please. Just like, oh, it's coming out with like 3 other movies, right? It's like, what? And but yeah, like when that came out, it was like my comfort movie. When I finally got a TV in my room, that DVD was playing 98% of the time. It was just always on.
Because that's what I was going to ask. Was as your fandom grew and you and you come back to it, like, did you kind of have those warm feelings? It sounds like you did, because I kind of talked about how with like Megalon, it was like, but again, as I was like learning that like the fandom take on Megalon was that like, oh no, this is like not a good movie. This is like the worst one in the series besides like Godzilla's Revenge and stuff. And like me when I'm like 11, 12 years old, I was like, maybe I do need to focus more on these like other serious movies. And I just kind of like ignored it, not ignored it, but like I was going like, oh, Godzilla versus Megalon, that's it's just too corny or whatever. And I feel bad. I kind of shunned the movie that started, but I've now have come totally full circle, and I go like, no, this movie's just like entertainment from beginning to end. But
even
so
today.
but you just had it just stuck with you for like yeah.
It was done, and you can imagine my disappointment when finding out that Trendmasters never did an Ebirah figure.
Yeah. Very
Like,
underrepresented figure in merch in general.
absolutely. So you can imagine how happy I was when the Movie Monster series release came out and it looked good.
Yeah. I'm surprised you didn't buy 5, or maybe you did buy 5. I don't know.
I wish I did, because now it's like so hard to find. I mean, I can't find it. I mean, arguably, I really don't go looking for it, because when I'm looking for Ebirah, I'm looking for things that adult me can buy in response to, $150 for this YMSF Ebirah.
Sure, right.
But that was probably like my biggest upset, like going into Outer Limits and asking the same gentleman who ran it, do you guys have an Ebirah figure? And the guy looks at me like, they never made one. Like, Bandai never made one. I'm like, what? How dare they? How can you not make a figure of Ebirah? And he's just not that popular. I'm like, how?
So actually, that's kind of interesting. I guess I kind of focused on the Godzilla aspect of the movie, but did Ebirah, or by extension, did Mothra? Like, this is your first exposure to both Mothra and Ebirah. Like, did you like really gravitate to the two of them as characters as well, and go like, oh, these, or were you more focused on Godzilla, and then they were?
It was a weird mixture, because I loved Godzilla from the gate, because in the Showa era, at that point, he was a hero. It was like a Saturday morning live action cartoon in a way.
Yeah.
Like, he was there to stop these like villains and everything. So of course I immediately drawn to Godzilla, but at that point in time, not knowing that Ghidorah was considered Godzilla's archenemy, in my mind, his greatest enemy was Ebirah.
There was Ebirah.
I would think, oh, Ebirah's going to grow his claws back and he's going to fight Godzilla again for revenge.
Yeah.
Like, it really ran that deep. And then finding out that it's like, oh, okay, Ghidorah is the arch nemesis. Who is this three-headed golden Godzilla, as one father put it in a comic book store one day? Who's that, Daddy? Oh, that's a three-headed golden Godzilla. It's like, what?
In another universe, this is Godzilla versus the Sea Monsters, the first Godzilla movie, and Ebirah is then rebuilt with robotic claws from the red bamboo.
I would love that.
And that carries on.
I would love, and I'll tell you this much: if X Plus and the Toho Maniacs line does a boat that's peeing into the ocean as a figure, I'm buying it.
You can just load it with like orange juice and have it spray.
Yeah. Even if it's just like translucent vinyl just coming off the sides of it, I'd be so ecstatic for that.
Sure.
But yeah, Ebirah was huge for me, and it was one of, and this is 100% serious. And if my mom was in the same building, I'd ask her to come in here. It's just like, Mom, is it true that I refused to eat seafood because I didn't want to eat Ebirah? She would look dead in the camera and say yes, and it was annoying.
All seafood, or just shrimp?
Any seafood. Any seafood. Zero.
And that continues to this day, is what you're saying?
Well, I eventually did try seafood, and it's fucking disgusting to me, so I can't. I can't.
Oh, your body justified your
exactly. I never would have liked it anyway. You would have sacrificed one of my favorite Godzilla villains of all time for me to just not like it.
Yeah, and I referenced Mothra too, but I feel like Mothra makes such like a small cameo in the movie that it's like I feel like we keep skipping over the giant condor too. But
yeah, well, the giant. The giant condor, for whatever reason, tossed me into a laughing fit. I don't know why. I guess it's just because the way its head moved.
Yeah.
It just made me laugh as a kid. Mothra, it's such a minimal role in that movie, but even as a kid, it's like there must be another movie where she's like a big deal because I don't know, she just had that air to her. And finally seeing the original Mothra and Mothra versus Godzilla, it's like, oh, I get it. I
Yeah.
absolutely get it. And unfortunately, at that point in time, I think the only Mothra figure that was being made at that point was by Trendmasters.
Probably. Yeah, we're talking like close to 1998, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it was just that 4.5 figure, which I actually still have. Found it during the move, and I was very happy about that. But yeah, the love for Mothra didn't come until a little bit later, but it really blossomed when GMK was put on DVD.
mm, okay.
Uh,
So, so I think it's well documented that this was originally supposed to be a King Kong movie, and
mhm.
Godzilla gets substituted in. And that's everybody kind of, I shouldn't say everybody knows that's right, but that's a pretty popular story. Do you think if this was a King Kong movie as opposed to a Godzilla movie, and everything else is exactly the same, do you think it would have had the same impact, or you think it's just Godzilla just looks so cool that
I
that was the impact?
I think it would have had the same impact, but I don't know if it would have had the staying power
Hmm.
because when I was a kid, King Kong was like it was like a nothing IP. Like there was really nothing coming out at that point until Peter Jackson's,
Yeah,
2005 remake
yeah.
and everything. So that might have been a little bit harder to facilitate. But if we're going, Trendmasters did King Kong figures instead of Godzilla figures. I have a feeling it might have taken me a little bit more to like really get on the train because Godzilla was such a huge benefactor, but I just love Ebirah so much.
So
So
it really is like Ebirah that like is like carrying so much of this movie for it.
and I really can't tell you why. Like
Hmm.
even to this day, it's like he's a giant shrimp lobster. It's like who cares? It's like I care.
But again the presentation's everything, right? Like Mothra is always present outside of Destroy All Monsters. Mothra is always presented as being, even if you don't have like a lot of context to Mothra's backstory, you go, there's something very important about her, you know. But
Yeah,
like Ebirah, it's like you talked about the giant claw coming up at the beginning, right? Like
it's like that's an iconic moment.
he's impaling the dudes fleeing on like the boat and stuff like that. You're just like, oh, it was like this is like a serious villain that like plays for
Yeah,
keeps. Because like you
like
didn't see
this
that
is
in Power Rangers, you
no,
know?
no, far from it.
No.
But you've got like the plot of the Red Bamboo kidnapping people from Infant Island and making this special lemon juice to like make Ebirah evade like their boat as they're getting more people to bring to their island to work for them and everything. Like there's just so much about that movie that to me is not only iconic but encapsulates that Showa era feel to Godzilla
Right.
because there's such a vibe to Showa era films. Like not even just Godzilla, but just Showa era Japanese films in general. Be it like the warm fuzz of the sound and
Hmm.
everything, the very era specific music that's being shown, the subject matter that gets, put into the story and the visuals and everything. I mean, ever since discovering what Arrow Video was, I've spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars on Showa era films beyond
Sure.
Godzilla. But it really did leave that much of an impact on me beyond just Godzilla, because even now I have an urge to watch something from like 1960s Japan. I
Sure,
have an
yeah. Yeah.
urge for that sound quality, for like the experimentation that was being done. There was so much going on in that time of like Japan's cinematic endeavors and everything. and just the fact that it's tied down to Godzilla versus the sea monster, it just some people would laugh, some people would, oh, that's funny. To me, it just feels right.
Yeah,
Like,
there's something about the colors, like it's like the video, it's the movie equivalent of like when people say, "Oh, everything sounds warmer on vinyl," right? Like it's like the video version of like that like warm blankets.
it's true. And God help me, if Mondo ever does Godzilla versus the sea monster on vinyl, I'm buying it. It's like it's done.
I know it is so good having like that surf soundtracks and stuff like that. So
Oh
I love
yeah.
that.
I mean, even in MP3 format, it just has such a good crunch to it. It's got such a good groove to it and
Yeah.
everything. It's like, how dare you be so good? It's like it's almost like to the point where it transcends being a soundtrack. It's just an instrumental album at this point.
Yeah, I mean it is probably that's not it's not really music that's reused again in the
No,
series. I mean, off the top of my head, I don't think any of it gets reused ever again. But I could be wrong. Who knows? But like, as far as I know, I think it's a pretty self-contained soundtrack.
which is a
And
shame because hearing that dun 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 as the claw comes up and
yeah,
everything, it's just again, that's such a moment. That's such a time right there.
it's so good. And it's like when you think of like, I think of like like the surf music kind of like I picture like Batman 66 like too, and it's like I feel like these are things that just like very much products of like their time, but there's such a good a unique visual presentation and an audio presentation.
Yeah.
So no, I totally hear you on that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is a philosophical question or not, but I guess we'll kind of pontificate a little bit. I guess we will.
All
So
right.
this was not my first Godzilla movie. This is probably I would think as I was working through the Godzilla series, I probably didn't get to this one right
Mhm.
away. I feel like just in terms of like access, I feel like I didn't I was slowly gradually getting all the VHS tapes. They're at like Toys R Us or something like that. And I feel like this is like might have been like one of like the later ones I got. But you know, it made sense to me going like, oh yeah, Godzilla's got all these movies. Like, and I feel like I was so used to all these shows where it's like the main character takes a detour off the
Mhm.
beaten path, right? Like, you know, we're used to Godzilla being like in a cityscape and stuff like that. But here's Godzilla on like part one of his like little island adventure.
Yeah.
And I feel like when we were growing up, it was very common for at some point long running shows or movies to kind of have a detour where they maybe go to like an island or they go to like a snowy region. They get out of their environment. James Bond goes to space in Moonraker, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you do you think hypothetically, say the MonsterVerse continues for another 20 years, would the viewing public today, in the generation that watches these movies today, like would a movie where Godzilla is just chilling on an island somewhere for the entire movie, would that work today? And like the cast is like, it doesn't have to be like this cast of like a bank robber and like these like, you know, teenagers like stealing a boat, but like something very small like that. Do you think that works in this world today?
I think so, especially like taking into account where the MonsterVerse is at this point. Because we have this big epic coming out, Godzilla Kong, the New Empire, and everything. And it's like obviously there's got to be some downtime
Yeah,
somewhere.
right.
And it's like who's to say after Adam Wingard makes his third MonsterVerse movie, which is being speculated at this point, who's to say Godzilla just doesn't end up on an island and it just so happens that the kaiju of choice is a giant shrimp lobster thing. It's like why not? It's
Yeah,
like at this point, we have a whole world at the center of the earth. We have Godzilla becoming good friends with a giant ape. We have a very mean ape enslaving other apes whose pet is a giant snow Godzilla, to put it very bluntly.
right, right.
It's like why wouldn't there be a movie where Godzilla's on a tropical island and there's something going on that isn't right, both in his terms and in human terms? In fact, I think when it comes to a story such as that, Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, and this is not my bias talking, would probably fit into the MonsterVerse pretty well after a certain point.
I
Because it's
agree.
like the great Hollow Earth wars. They're gone, they're done. Godzilla is the king of the monsters, Kong is the king of Hollow Earth. They're both doing their own thing now. Godzilla ends up on a tropical island and he knows something's not right. People are getting hurt, the balance of nature is being thrown off. Why wouldn't that work?
Yeah, I agree. And like
And
let's
I'm
put
there
in,
for
let's put
it.
it in context, like, dude, like the Showa series where it's at to that point too. Like the movie prior to this is literally like a worldwide invasion from, the aliens from Planet X. And, it's like you had this to that point what was like the grandest Godzilla movie. And then like, he probably just like, I need a rest, man. I need to go find
Yeah.
this like cave to just kind of sleep in. And then some people are gonna wake me up by striking me with lightning. I was just trying to get some rest. But like I like those like small, like call them like small stories, like in the sense that it's like,
Yeah, it's
you
not
know,
worldwide. It's really
yeah,
just it's really just condensed to this one area.
yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot more creative challenges to take there because, you have to ask yourself, well, if this continues on here, what does that mean for the rest of the world? What does that mean for neighboring islands? What does that mean for the closest country? What does that mean for humanity as a whole? And that's where I feel everything kind of just takes root because at that point, it's like we've seen how bad it could get. What are we going to do to prevent that from happening again?
Yeah.
So, like, even if, post Wingard trilogy, if that actually ends up happening, it's like Godzilla's on an island, there's a giant shrimp lobster, and there's an evil organization working there. Like, why not? Maybe, theoretically speaking, Gia's family's on that island and they're being forced to make lemon juice for a boat to pee in the water to keep this giant lobster shrimp from attacking the boat and
Yeah.
everything. Who's to say? Who's to
Yeah.
say? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I mean, this movie works like as well as it does. Like, and I think kind of to something you said earlier, it's like you don't get the city destroying scenes. You do get them like randomly fighting fighter jets, which are like a little shoehorned in because like the Red Bamboo. Of course, they're just going to have fighter jets, but like you
Yeah.
get this small cast of human characters that's just really well done. Like
Mhm.
I think of all the Godzilla movies, I think this is actually one of the casts that like kind of sticks out the best. And I think
Slaps.
they're like just a really well written crew. I like the dynamic. Like you said it earlier, it's like they're like you get the bank robber. uh
You get some dudes down on their luck that were just trying to win a 24-hour dancing competition.
Yeah, then you got like, and then you
Like,
mix them in with like, oh my God, I'm blanking on the character's name, but like Kumi Mizuno's character, and like, you get like the Mothra's people, like, then
the
you got
one
this
guy
like,
looking for his brother and everything. Like,
yeah, and
there's
you
so
get,
much going on, but it's like, works.
yeah, and these like cartoony villains where of course the dude's wearing an eye patch. Why wouldn't he be wearing it?
Why
Why
wouldn't
wouldn't?
he be?
So,
Of
yeah,
course, they're wearing gray uniforms and everything with arm patches on them and everything. Like,
yeah,
it's so cartoonishly evil. You can actually hear in HD quality him twirling his mustache, but
yeah,
it just works. It
yeah,
really does, especially in a world where the film prior it was a full scale alien invasion.
right, right.
It's
Yeah,
like
this,
how does
this
this
feels.
dis- how does this suspend disbelief? Like it's like all right.
This feels like I mean this like in a positive way. This feels like the plot to like a live action Hanna-Barbera style like adventure.
Absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
kind of like that like Saturday morning cartoon type vibe, like it's not end of the world stake. It doesn't always have to be end of the world stakes. It can just be like just like it's a day in Godzilla's life when he's just trying to go on vacation and he's getting attacked by this repurposed Rodan puppet. and a giant shrimp lobster, and he just also happens to foil some terrorist organization's plot without even trying. Like that's like the best part too is like he like just stumbles into like this like terrorist plot and just like he's like, yeah, I'm gonna just like unintentionally disrupt this whole thing.
And he just cleans house because then that's it. Never have to hear from them again because it was that enclosed of an event.
Yeah, I
Like,
like that. I like
yeah,
stories like that. You know, I think of
absolutely.
like when like Logan came out, like I was like, yeah, Logan's like it's a pretty character driven, intimate movie in the sense. Like obviously there are like there's some bigger stakes in it, but it's like it never feels like, oh, this is like a world threatening event, you know.
Yeah.
So
And
did you I
mhm,
guess sticking with like the Island Adventures, did you like Son of Godzilla 2 when you saw that?
instantaneously.
Really?
The
Yeah.
minute I popped that DVD in and I saw that I was on another island, it's like, yeah, I'm in for it. I hated Minya as a kid. Now I love him. But Son of Godzilla was one of those movies, mind you, at this point in time, I didn't have a computer. I didn't have access to the internet. So when I eventually did get that and I saw that Son of Godzilla was considered lowbrow, not the best, I scoffed at that because it's like, how? This is Godzilla with a son. He's protecting him. He's coming to his aid. He's calling for his dad from inside of an egg. He has to fight off a giant spider and giant praying mantises. I don't know. It was just an instant love of mine because at that point, I think I had seen most of the Heisei era on the Sci-Fi Channel marathons. I had seen a little bit of the Showa era, not too much because it wasn't all available right away.
hmm
But no, Son of Godzilla, it was just like, oh, this is like the official like sequel to that of like Son of God. I mean, Godzilla versus the Sea Monster. That's how it felt to me, and that's how it still feels to me in a way.
Yeah.
Because yeah, Godzilla looks different, and it looks like he just found out that he has jaundice and everything. But you know, that goes well beyond all of that. That's just another fun story that just works.
Yeah.
You have a
Yeah.
science team working on something on an island, on this isolated island where they're testing it. It's causing insects and everything to grow very, very large in a very dangerous state. There's a random girl there. There's this reporter who just swoops in to get like the scoop on this story. Again, I can see a story like that being adapted to the MonsterVerse too. Like at some point.
Maybe that's kind of happening in GXK with except with
Maybe.
Kong and Suko, maybe. I don't know,
Maybe.
but it's
Suka.
yeah. It's like yeah, I think those two movies are always kind of I always think of like, Godzilla versus the Thing, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and Monster Zero. That's like one arc, like,
Yeah.
and then I think this is like a little two movie arc. And
Yeah.
then I just kind of goes like, man, I was like, I feel like all these movies like in real time happen like kind of like back to back to back, and I just go, God, Godzilla just got out of like this like uh this world invasion from aliens. He's just trying to rest. He has to like, do Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, and the island gets blown up, and he goes to another island just to get some rest, and he ends up adopting a kid. It's like
Yeah,
what
he ends up
a
having a son. It's like what a crazy 2 weeks this guy is having right now.
yeah, it's like he's just like, oh my god, what he what life changes had to go through. It's funny in my head if you just assume this all three of those movies happen over the course of like 2 weeks.
It really does.
So
Because man's knocked out in a cave covered in rocks, gets resurrected, kills a giant condor, fights off some jets, stops a world terrorist organization, kills or defeats a giant shrimp lobster, and then 2 days later, I have a son. All right. I mean, alien invasion, giant shrimp lobster. All right, I'll run with it. Why not?
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, do you have any, because you are the figure guy, well,
Yeah.
as well as me, we're both pretty aggressive collectors. Do you have any favorite merch related to this movie?
Well, unfortunately, I only have two Ebirah figures in my collection. That is a very old, I believe, Marmot or Bullmark. It's like a smaller Ebirah, and I have the Movie Monster series. And unfortunately, since the movie monster series is like my main thing, I don't believe they've done a variation of 66 Godzilla. So I
Mm.
guess it would have to be my original DVD copy of Godzilla versus the Sea Monster in the movie monster series version of Ebirah.
It's actually probably a valuable DVD. Those DVDs like sometimes go for like a few $100 from that era.
Yeah, I remember before the Criterion Collection came out, I think it was Son of Godzilla was like commanding some wild prices on the internet.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
after
that's
that, that was one of the movies that never really got reissued,
right. Yeah.
like not on
Yeah.
Blu-ray or anything until the Criterion thing happened. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
DVD and Blu-ray prices for Godzilla movies are insane right
Oh
now.
yeah.
It's crazy.
You see on Amazon not too long ago, the double feature of the Sony released Godzilla versus King Ghidorah and Godzilla Mothra Battle for Earth was going for like $500.
Yep. I bought that for like
I bought that on sale for
yeah, I was gonna
$12.
say something like that. I was like, I bought it for like $9, $10, like or like the Godzilla versus Biollante Blu-ray that always goes for a crazy amount of money. Go like I bought that at Best Buy for like $10.
I bought that FYE the day it released, walked at least a good mile just to get it because it's Godzilla versus Biollante. It's the last movie I need for my collection.
Yeah.
Like yeah, it's crazy. And I'm really really hoping that Criterion like pulls it together. And I know they have the rights. I know they do because they did those screenings and everything. But I'm really hoping that they do like a Heisei and Millennium box set, either together or separate, because the Godzilla movies need to be under one roof at this point.
Yeah, and TriStar still has a few, and
Yeah, I know like TriStar is always going to have the US version of Godzilla 2000, which is perfectly fine, but it's just like for the extended fandom outside of the US and everything, I imagine it's got to be a hell of a lot easier just buying off of Criterion instead
oh
of
yeah,
buying like a region free Blu-ray player and spending however much money on a DVD from like well over a decade plus ago.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Someday, maybe our angry letter writing campaign will work.
It should. I mean, after all these years, Godzilla being under one roof for the same distribution, it needs to happen at this
Yeah,
point. It really
yeah.
does. And Toho, you need to give Criterion the negatives. You need to give them the films, my guys. Please, please. We need 4K over here too, you know.
I know. Just, I know.
Do you know the hole in my soul that exists because there isn't a 4K version of Godzilla versus the Sea Monster?
they need to plug that hole for you.
Yeah, they really do. They really do.
Yeah.
Because I need it on VHS. I'm going to probably buy that tonight. I need it on 4K. I need it on everything imaginable.
Yeah, you can't. You gotta track down that original movie that changed your life.
Hell, I might even buy the laser disc. Who knows?
Oh,
I'm
get
sure
real
there's a
wild.
laser disc like release of it. Has to be. And they're
So,
cheap.
so yeah, I think you should at least get the VHS tape
Oh,
because
absolutely.
I mean we just like talked about for like 45 minutes about this movie. You gotta have that in your collection. I
Yeah,
think.
I do. I think I might even need multiple copies of it
Yeah.
because there's that version of it. There's the Anchor Bay version of it with the hand painted cover art and everything. Yeah, I might even have to dawdle into, other releases across the world solely for the fact of different cover art.
Oh God, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Just to have a story to tell if anybody asks that question. It's like, why that one? It's like,
Because it's the movie that changed my life. That's why.
it's the movie that caused me to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars each year on Godzilla merchandising.
But on the flip side, and this is a positive way to end this, if you didn't see Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, and I did not see Godzilla versus Megalon, we would not be sitting here right now having this conversation.
No, and I
Pal,
probably
friend, buddy.
yeah. I wouldn't have you as a friend. I wouldn't have a lot of people that I have today as friends.
Yeah.
Like Drew and JR and RJ and Lily and John, everybody. Like there's so many people I've met because of Godzilla and YouTube, but mostly Godzilla. Mostly because of Godzilla. Like I've gotten to talk to people like you. I've gotten to talk to people like Figure Mania Show and Luminous News and G Forever and Kaiju Canuck. Like I've gotten to be in the same room as some of my favorite people who make some of my favorite content, audio based or visual based otherwise. And that to me is special. It really is. And I know the fandom likes to have their spats every now and again over what's good, what's bad, what's all right, what isn't, but it really is, and I apologize if this is cheesy, but it really is beautiful that through the bad and the good, we're all connected together because we like Godzilla.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. I really do.
Holy shit. That really, that like really summed up the whole point of like what I'm trying to do with this podcast.
Great. Good.
I think I'm going to end it there because I don't have a better way to end it. You did great,
Awesome.
Rob. You did great.
The closer.
So there you have it. I want to thank Rob again for coming on and sharing that story. And I think, a lot of what he said towards the end there really kind of sums up one of the goals of this podcast, to really kind of share those personal stories and those different perspectives on kaiju media. But, it's also about having fun too. And like I've been saying every episode so far, I've really come to enjoy the random YouTube shorts that I've put out kind of randomly. I like seeing how much information I can cram into 60 seconds, though I am being mindful to slow it down a little bit. I think I had one that I did really like, but I was like kind of talking like the Micro Machines guy. But anyway, so what's next? So the next episode of the podcast is going to be a few days later than normal because Godzilla Kong: The New Empire is coming out. So, the next episode is going to focus on that. So, but in the interim, I will be putting out more random YouTube content here and there. So again, you can find Echoes of Giant Monsters wherever you catch your podcast. You can find it on YouTube. And you can follow me on X, Twitter, whatever, at Echoes of GM Pod. So, till next time, one more time, thanks again to Rob, and I will see you or hear you. I won't see you or hear you. I guess you'll hear me, but not see me. Anyway, see you, hear me in a few weeks as I ramble about Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. Till then, have a good one.